right.
Before I actually introduce our speaker, I'd like to thank Chuck Hooper and Patricia Fripp for working with us to line up some guest speakers from the National Speakers Association of Northern California Speakers Academy. Today's speaker is Lisa Johnson, who I'll introduce in a moment. She is a member of the Speakers Academy currently. We also have Aurora Bataclan as a guest today, who is one of our future speakers, and we have others lined up as well. So today I'm going to like to introduce our speaker. After 18 years as a successful corporate human resources executive with a specialty in employee relations and manager training, where she collaborated with hundreds of small businesses as well as international clients such as Facebook, Google, and Tesla, Lisa Johnson founded her own HR consulting and leadership training business called Corporate Cowgirl. Combining her Cowgirl horse performance experience with her corporate employee performance experience, Lisa utilizes horse training analogies to give leaders fresh insights and valuable behavioral tools to understand and manage their people more effectively. Today, Lisa will be speaking on how to establish yourself as a successful leader during a prolonged disaster. The title of Lisa's talk today is Effective Leadership in an Extended Crisis. Let's give Lisa a big Golden Gate Breakfast Club welcome, and I'm going to unmute everybody.
Hey, Lisa, thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you,
Welcome.
Tony. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to encourage you to grab your cashew yogurt or your bacon, no judgment, whatever breakfast you need. Get comfy, because I have a very important story for you. Now, it was one of the scariest moments in my entire. It was during the 2017 fire in Santa Rosa, and it was about 3:30 a.m., and we needed to move 30 horses away from the fire. It was hot, it was hectic, it was dangerous, people were panicking, animals were panicking. Most scariest moment of my life to date. My horse refused to get in the trailer, absolutely refused. Understandably, he wanted to run away. I didn't blame him. Why would he follow me as his leader into a metal box in the middle of a fire? But all I kept thinking was, if he doesn't get in the trailer, he will die. If he doesn't get in the trailer, I have to leave him with the fire. And as I was dealing with that crisis, a woman to my left started yelling at me. And she said, hey, if that was my horse, I would beat him on the butt. He'd get in that trailer. You need to be the boss. Show him who the boss is. Now, my instincts said no. That may work for some, but for my horse, that would not work. I have to have his respect, and that respect has been built upon firm but fair and consistent leadership. But in that moment, my fear said, do it. My fear said, this will save his life. My fear said, you have no other choice. So without taking a pause, I whacked my horse. A second later, I was on the ground, looking up at the fire. And in that pause and in that moment, he kicks the senses back into me. There's a well-known horse training adage that goes like this. Make what you want the horse to do very easy, and make what you do not want the horse to do very hard. It's true for managing people, and it's true for managing horses. As a leader, you must show an appealing path. You must make the choice of least resistance appealing to your team. So they will choose that. And conversely, you must make what you do not want very difficult. So in that powerful, humble moment on the ground, I took a pause and I made my plan. I got up and I started running him in circles all around the trailer. All the areas that he wanted to run to suppose a safety to now became areas of work, of strenuous work, not punishment, fair, strenuous work. And the area in front of the trailer where I needed him to go was where I stopped. That was his area of peace. That was his place of rest. He made the connection. I got his trust back by being fair and being thoughtful and strategic and taking a pause and realizing what he needed to make the right decision. He went in the trailer. So I gained his confidence back. Horses are like mirrors of your intent. People are too. As leaders, regardless of force or fairness, your horse and your people know if you are grounded or misguided. They know if you have their best interest at heart. And the lady that had yelled at me and beat her horse into the trailer, her horse got in the trailer and then tore it up. Now, to be fair to her, I don't know if she was acting out of fear. I don't know if this is how she led as a leader all the time, or if she was having a moment of fear. But I have a question for you I'd like you to consider. Do you know any leaders like that, where it's more important to them that you know that they are the boss than it is for them to admit they made a mistake? It is actually quite common. Teams will tolerate this type of leadership in the day-to-day, but foolish leadership in a crisis is actually lethal. And leaders in a crisis, we are judged by our ability to inspire confidence in our teams, to follow us, to ignore the fire, to ignore the virus, to ignore the earthquake, and follow us against their instincts. Force, charm, manipulation all lose their power in an extended crisis. These are crutches that leaders may use in the day-to-day. In an extended crisis, they are empty skills. Now, I won't ask you to raise your hands, but have you ever made a mistake as a leader? Have you ever taken bad advice? I see some nodding heads, I'm just saying. Have you ever accepted the status quo as the best option or made the wrong decision? Well, spoiler alert, it's part of being human, so you have. But if leaders understand what specific structure teams need in an extended crisis and what traits those members need to support those stages, they increase their chances to respond optimally, to make the right decision, to earn them the respect of their reports, and give their company a better chance at survival. Now, this is a very near and dear topic right now. I don't think there's anybody on this call who isn't experiencing a crisis, an extended crisis right now. So you will learn today a simple 4-phase structure that you can use to apply to yourself and to your teams to be an effective leader in an extended crisis. And for the next 15 minutes, this will be our focus. Now, the first one of the 4, the first thing you need to do, even as the fire is licking on your back, is manage your mindset first. A leader at a start of a crisis almost always acts subconsciously and then tries to think of a reason to justify their action. Now, like the lady in the fire, she hit her horse. She would have justified that action as the only choice rather than evaluating and perhaps admitting her mistake. This is a common pattern in a crisis that leaders act from the subconscious and then apply meaning to it rather than reflect. It's a normal human behavior. So therefore, the number one thing you need to do in a crisis is manage your own mindset first before you attempt to manage others. Now, like everyone else, the leader may be in shock or fear, and that makes them decide out of pure reaction versus strategy. Panic is a powerful force, and leaders are not immune to it. To manage your own mindset, there are two practices that I highly recommend. The first I call the protective pause. This is used in horsemanship, but applying it to people, if there's a fire, a pandemic, an earthquake, there's typically 30 seconds, a minute, depending on the situation, even a few days, that you can hit and do a protective pause. You pause to look for the best available decision to mitigate the risk. Now, if I just pause in that fire, rather than listening to this woman, and I listened to my own instincts, I would have remembered the adage that I had already learned about how to manage my horse, to make what he needed to do easy and what he should not do very, very hard. And if you let your team see you weigh these options and then be decisive, that you make the best choice transparently, you build even more credibility and respect from your team, which translates to reduced anxiety and more productivity. The second piece of advice for managing your mindset is to have not just the protective pause, but a support system. This may sound very obvious, but you'd be surprised at how many leaders tell their teams, you need to get enough sleep. You need to not work 16-hour days. You need to eat healthy. You need to take breaks, but they actually don't practice that. Do not wait for a crisis to be an example of good mental health, which is critical in a crisis. You need to get the sleep. You need to have a mentor or two. You need to find professional and personal support groups. We're in one right now. You need to create a healthy network of colleagues. You need to make sure that you are supported in healthy structure and habits with a network before the crisis hits. Now, number 2, evaluate and communicate. The crisis hits. Everyone's looking for direction. Decisions must be made. You again have 2 steps in your structure in this stage to lean on. Evaluate, communicate. What are you going to evaluate? You are going to evaluate safety and availability. You need to know who and what needs help, people and facilities, as well as who and what is available. Then you communicate that status to your team. At this stage, and this is critical, facts rule, not opinion. State the facts and the resources. Resist the commentary or speculation. Your credibility as a leader lies in your ability to state those facts with no drama. Now, bringing it back to horses, because for me, it all comes back to the horses. Horses are reassured by rhythm. Let me ask you why. Why is rhythm comforting and calming? It's comforting and calming for horses and people because it's predictable. And as we all know right now, we're in a very, very unpredictable situation. So people crave predictability. So rhythm is your friend. And by that, I mean, in the training world of horses, rhythm is expressed through what we call pressure and release. If I want my horse to move to the right, I put pressure on the left leg and release it. The pressure is a message, move to the right. The release allows the horse to absorb it and do what I've asked. I would not just pound on them or hold it and sustain the pressure. Pressure, release, pressure, release. Everything is done with rhythm. The horse can predict the rhythm. That's how you communicate to a horse. When you're in extended crisis, especially at the beginning, you need to communicate with rhythm to your team. You need to pick a structure, a day, a time, a week, whatever fits your culture, and you need to stick to it. You need to make sure that you are being rhythmic and predictable. The pressure is on, the information is out, and then there is the release, and it needs to be consistent. A common mistake at this stage is to over communicate. It's overwhelming. Your team is already overwhelmed. Create a structure and a rhythm and stick to it. Now, a pitfall of this stage, stop sharing my screen for just a moment, is you may get distracted. Your team, you may think is distracted, but they are not. In fact, the reality is they're judging you very, very closely at this stage. So if you decide to avoid the communication, another common normal reaction to stress by leaders, and instead, let's say you bring cookies to the office, but you're not talking about pending layoffs. Or you talk about how the company is giving to a charity, but your team really wants to know about the reduced hours. They will lose faith. Many, many leaders want to go to the feel-good niceties because it reassures their own value. We're human. We're insecure in these moments. We want reassurance. It's understandable, but you need the courage to stay on point. Niceties are very important. I'm going to talk about those in terms of gratitude later, but this is a timing issue. So you need to make sure at this time, you're not avoiding the communication. You're communicating the difficult issues and you are hitting them first. Be transparent. If you don't know something, let them know. That's okay. But you'll nurture trust if you are consistent in your communication and you confront whatever issue is at play. Go for the hard message first. Now, let's move on to number 3. Now, number 3 is you need to embrace your new reality. I almost feel like I don't need to talk about this because I think you're all living it right now. But in the example that I started with, the fire in Santa Rosa went on for weeks and months. And then the aftermath went on for years. And then another fire came. It was bigger than the first fire, which broke all the records. And at that time, I was a VP of HR, staffing company. We had about 10,000 contingent workers and 250 staff members and hundreds of clients. And with the executive team, we managed through those 2 fires. And in that role, I also managed through employee shootings, violence in the workplace, employee stalkers, extended employee relations crises, a lot of different traumas. And on a personal note, I'm a 2-time cancer survivor. I managed through all those crises. And I don't need to ask you to raise your hand to ask if you're a survivor of crisis, because if you are breathing and over 30, I know you are. And also you've been on here since 7 a.m. To listen to me talk, so I know you're a survivor. I know you're tough. Now, through all those experiences, I had to recalibrate my energy every time to embrace a new reality. I'm sure you're doing that right now. Just like horses respond to the energy you bring or are lacking, people are the same. You must be the example you want to see in your people. You need to have acceptance of your situation. The faster you accept it, the more release of tension you'll experience. And this will free up your energy to manage better. Now, a pitfall at this stage is people think being that direct and accepting your new reality means you have to put on a front or become what I'd call Pollyanna. You don't need to spin. You need to actually genuinely move yourself into a paradigm shift that tells yourself come what may, you will do your best. Not perfect. You will make mistakes, but you will commit to doing your best. Now, to support this, many leaders read books, review mantras, meditate and visualize, watch inspiring videos of people overcoming obstacles. You do need to surround yourself with images and media that is positive and constructive and supports that you can overcome a challenge, because people have overcome incredible challenges. So you need to feed that to your mind. Right now, we are surrounded by a plethora of news from a plethora of outlets. We can pick any of them. We need to be informed. This is not to avoid reality. Again, it's actually quite the opposite. You're facing the reality, but you are arming yourself with the right information. You are feeding your mind the right information. The last of these 4 stages is dare to evolve and cycle again. Now, there comes a phase when you're going through an extended crisis where you and your team have kind of accepted it. This does not mean you're not still coping. It does not mean that some people still aren't in shock. It just means that you've accepted the current reality. And there's usually a pause in the news flow at this point, or at least it's become predictable. You've moved now into a space where you no longer have to stay in that factual mode. You can move to the innovative and creative. You will get a lot of unexpected information in a crisis. Use it. Use it to improve your team, train your team, reorganize your team, evolve your team with that information. Resist the urge to be in your comfort zone at this point. This is when you want to capitalize on the energy your team does have to give you. Because, spoiler alert, again, you're going to move back to the beginning of the cycle again. It'll take one big obstacle or news break in the crisis that's a challenge, and the whole team will move back to that beginning point. This isn't something you do once. We're talking about an extended crisis. This is something you move through these phases over and over again. So you need to be observant. You need to know when your team is at this stage. Now that you've had the structure of the stages, I'm going to stop sharing here for a moment. Let's talk about what traits do leaders need to be able to do these tasks, these stages I'm talking about. Right now, you have yourself, you have your leaders, your executive teams, your boards of directors, your managers, your supervisors. You have people who are furloughed and laid off that you may be bringing back. You will someday have new hires as well. So the next 6 traits are critical that they be trained in these and that they be accomplished, including yourself. And these 6 main skills required for our modern world to get through an extended crisis are: 1, to be a courageous communicator. People talk about courage in a crisis, and it comes in many forms. And for leaders, that means to tell a hard truth and to be able to face an unhappy crowd. Your leaders must be comfortable with confrontation. Number 2, must be adaptable and authentic. This means realistic, fair, flexible, and communicating with minimal spin. Back to our authenticity. You need to be real. 3, be resolute. That means to be determined, resourceful, focused, and most importantly, decisive. Number 4 is to be emotionally astute. Now, you hear a lot about emotional intelligence. I love that phrase as well, but I prefer to say emotionally astute because it takes it a step beyond. Many of us know body language. Many of us can read tones of voices, words, all the subliminal cues. But can you then take that information and astutely respond to it in a constructive way that mitigates risks and focuses on solutions? Having the intelligence to read emotion is not the same as having the ability to respond to it. Number 5, and this one, you know, we're living it right now, embrace technology. That would be a complete other presentation on how to manage remote teams. That's an art form unto itself. But your current leaders, yourself, of course, your new hires, people you bring back, they must be comfortable with technology because as you see, virus, fire, earthquake, we're going to be communicating through technology. Last and never, never, never least, they must be able to express gratitude. I'm going to take a little pause of silence for that one. This is greatly underrated in a crisis. Gratitude in crisis and kindness are critical in a crisis. Why do you think that is? Besides the obvious that it's a good thing to do, there's an energy flow to managing a crisis with a team. Resentments and miscommunications quickly build up. People are scared, people are challenged, they have financial worries, health worries. Resentments and miscommunication happen in a heartbeat. And resentment blocks the flow of productivity and communication. Gratitude, appreciation breaks that flow, breaks it. But most common problem is not understanding how to make it resonate. When I send surveys to many of my clients' employees, one of their biggest complaints is, my boss doesn't appreciate me. Now, this is not for lack of that boss trying. They may have been trying very hard. But if you've ever read the book about the 7 languages or 5 languages rather of love, you understand that people express their love based on what they value. Appreciation and gratitude, exactly the same. You must understand what your employees, each of them, or your departments, or however large your organization is, what they appreciate. And that is based on what they value. And that means you must observe them, and you must observe them through this technology, which is a bit more difficult to do. But that's why managing a team remotely is actually much harder than in person. Now, before I close, let's quickly go over the basic 4 stages and what I've shared. The 4 stages. First one, manage your own mindset. Practice a protective pause. Build your support system. Number 2, evaluate and communicate. Evaluate safety and availability. Communicate facts. Reassure with rhythm. Number 3, embrace. Embrace your new reality. Be the employee or the leader that you would like to see. And feed your mind. Feed your mind examples of strength and hope. Number 4, dare to evolve, then cycle again. Discover and change and evolve. There's opportunity. It may be cliche, but it's true. The word Chinese 2 characters for crisis, one means danger, one means opportunity. There is opportunity here to evolve your company. You're going to understand where your gaps are. You're going to have people step up who never have before. Open your eyes, look for those opportunities, and reorganize, and then prepare to cycle again. And the 6 traits that we talked about, courageous communicator, it's critical. Adaptable, authentic, resolute, emotionally astute, embrace technology, and express gratitude.
Well, thank you. That was amazing.
Thank you.
You guys.
Yay, Lisa!
So Lisa, I'm so glad that Tony's recording this because you were so on point, and I was trying to take notes and I missed a lot of the nuances.
Craig, you have to unmute yourself. Craig, you're muted. Craig, unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry, guys.
There
I
you
don't know
go.
where I lost you. We're going to go ahead and we're going to open it up to group chat right now. So if you have questions, go ahead and pose them. We've got a few minutes and we can ask Lisa a few questions. Let's see. Here's one from Chuck Cooper. Any tips on how we interview to find candidates with these needed traits? Great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. I think you really need to make sure that you don't go the traditional route and that you do behavioral interviewing. So that means you need to ask for scenarios and not just a surface canned answer. So I would ask things about what was your biggest experience with personal growth? What did you learn? How have you managed through crisis? What was your role? I would dig deeper with that and say, who on your team was the most successful and who struggled the most? How did you support them? What's the hardest news you've ever had to deliver to a group? What was the fallout? How did you manage it? A lot of companies, to dig into these traits now, don't just do the verbal interview. They write up an essay of an actual situation that happened in their company, change a few things so it's not, proprietary. But they have the person actually write out on top of the interview. You'd be surprised how much you will learn about somebody's communication skills if they tell you the answers they rehearsed, but that they actually have to write out per directions answers to a crisis. You'll learn a lot.
Okay.
I have a question, Craig.
Yeah, go ahead, Betty.
Hi. First of all, Lisa, what a fabulous presentation. Organized. I took a lot of notes, Craig, so I'm happy to share them with you if you can read my writing. I have a question. I do a daily team meeting at least once a day with my very small team. And it's really hard. We're not Zooming. We're just doing a call.
Mm-hmm.
But and the affect, it's kind of flat.
Yep.
And because we're going over the to-dos of this property and let's get this done. We got it. But at the beginning, I start with, tell me how it's going for you. And I try to get them to talk, but they're both kind of reticent about that.
Yeah.
How can we get some more enthusiasm going?
That's a great question. I actually just wrote a little mini article on why not to ask your employees how they are. And the reason for that is the blanket question from a leader, how you doing? Which we all ask, by the way. You're not alone. The average employee will not give you an honest answer. It's too loaded for them at this point in a crisis. They want to tell you about how they're about to get divorced or whatever's going on, but there's a line there. They can't do that. And so they give you a pat answer or a short answer. The way I manage that is those check-in questions I would do personally one-on-one, and I would ask the things I know. How is your daughter? How is your family? How is your grandmother? I would make sure that it was meaningful. During the meeting, though, duration on these calls is really critical. Our attention spans these days are so much smaller. So you have to keep your meetings short. That's your first thing. Your employees have to help you with the agenda. So yes, you can say, I have these three areas I'm going to cover, but I want you guys to bring X, Y, and Z. You need to actually force them to engage, and it's meaningful to them. And then the first time you do that, they're not engaged, then the truth is your biggest time saver. Hey guys, this meeting format doesn't seem to be working. We need to find a new one. These are the three things that I need to update on. These are the two things I need from you. Let's brainstorm. You might find out a couple of those things, they just want an email. They really don't want to talk about it. You might be surprised at the things that they actually do want to talk about they haven't brought up before. But you must, in the virtual world, unless you call people directly, they're going to be on their phone. They're going to be checking out. The cat's going to run across the table. All kinds of things are going to happen. So my advice is keep the meeting short, get their advice. Truth saves you a lot of time. Just call it out and then recalibrate it. You need to change it up as well. When we could meet in person, you could do meetings in an office, in a conference room, at a coffee shop, things like that. Changing it up in the virtual world, I've seen people do it a lot of different ways. Sometimes they do themes, sometimes they have one person lead, but get them involved so they don't have the opportunity to sit back and check out.
Good idea about changing the lead of the group. That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. Bert, were you going to ask something?
No.
Oh, okay. Well,
The other thing, let me make an observation. I think in the terms of leadership, was alluded to at the last one, is in my work today, we don't have a leader, someone who inspires or at the top. I'm on the board of directors. All of us participate with each other. And in that sense, these principles are good principles, but not from a hierarchical standpoint. If that makes any sense.
Absolutely does. Yeah, that's a different animal. We're talking about folks with reports, whereas a board of directors is a board of equals. And so it's a little bit of a different mindset.
all right. Lisa, would you like to tell us a little bit about your upcoming book?
Yeah, I'm very, very excited. I've been working on this for some time. Every time I speak, I use stories about my horse because I just feel like there's so much knowledge there that translates into managing people. It's really fascinating to me. And it's just a new way, a different perspective for people to understand. My book will be about a level set for managers. What I see a lot of speakers who do what I do will talk at a very high level strategically. I actually want to put in the day-to-day challenges of managers managing teams, probably from the, let's say, CEO, anybody who has reports, and put in real life scenarios. And the horse analogy will be on one side and the people analogy will be on the other side, to give people new perspective and actual practical takeaways. What to do. You'd be surprised, some of the very practical stuff I get asked about, people just don't have the talk tracks for. So I want to include options of what to say and what to do.
Well, thank you for joining us. This was a great meeting. I'm glad Tony recorded it, and we can all visit it again soon. Let's everyone give Lisa a warm applause. Tony, can you get the mics?
Thank you.
Very, very much. I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you very much.
All right, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. And remember, board members, we do have a board meeting next Tuesday, I believe. So I'll get an announcement out to everybody. Thanks for joining us today at the Breakfast Club. Everyone have an awesome week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you again.
All right.
Good job, Craig.
Thank you, Lisa.
Craig.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.